metropolitan area for starting and growing businesses. We offer several classes, many of which are online now and are free right now. And we have webinars and classes on topics ranging from business planning to social media. What you'll hear today is lessons from a founder of a business here in Austin. And we're going to talk about resiliency and how to overcome hardships. And we also offer no cost and confidential one-on-one coaching. So if you have those questions about how to start and grow a business, then we have coaches who are available to help you with those and answer those questions. So today, we're really going to talk a little bit about resiliency, right? And this idea of emerging from hardship strengthened and more resourceful than we were before. And when Inc. magazine asked the CEOs behind the 500 fastest growing companies in the US which qualities they attributed to their success, grit and resilience most often topped the list, alongside risk-taking and thinking big. So whether you're here as an aspiring entrepreneur looking to start your business, or you already own a business and you're struggling during these disruptions and trying to think about staying alive, or even if you're thinking about how to grow during this downturn, then you're in the right place. And those who adjust better to change are more likely to create and sustain a successful company through the many challenges of owning and operating a business, especially during economic downturns and disasters. So I'm very honored today to be interviewing Gay Gaddis, and I'll share a little bit about her background and then ask her to share a little bit of her origin story. I have a few questions for Gay, and then I'll open it up to our audience. If you have a question, please type it into the chat box, and towards the end of today's session, we'll ask as many questions as we can while we have time. So in 1989, Gay cashed in her $16,000 IRA to create a new breed of agency, T3, which stands for the think tank. The company rose to national prominence for innovation under her leadership for more than 30 years. Today, Gay is focusing her always-on energy to empower entrepreneurs and the next generation of business leaders to take big leaps in their careers and lives. She is an active speaker on women's leadership, company culture, and entrepreneurship. Her recent book, Cowgirl Power, which I've read and love, released in January 2018, it shares insights and examples for women to develop personal power and lead like fearless cowgirls. I'm no cowgirl, I'm a city slicker, a city boy, and I learned a lot from this book. It has lessons for everyone. It is available through the Austin Public Library as well as wherever you buy your books, so I highly recommend it. Gay is the first female chairperson of the Texas Business Leadership Council and is former chair of the Committee of 200, a top women's business organization that advances women's leadership in business. She's also on the board of Texas Cultural Trust, and she was an immediate past board member for the Monotype Imaging Holding Incorporated. Gay is deeply involved with the University of Texas, Book of Mormons. She's on the board of Texas Exes, the official alumni association of UT, and is part of the Dean's Advisory Council to the Macomb School of Business. She's also an advisor for both the College of Fine Arts and the Moody College of Communication. Gay and her husband Lee own the historic Double Heart Ranch in the Texas Hill Country, home of Fossil Ridge Creative Center, which is a retreat for thinking creatively and collaboratively. Fossil Ridge blends hill country nature with inspiring architecture and state-of-the-art facilities to spark imagination, serving as a venue for nonprofit events, corporate retreats, and creative workshops. This is also the home of Gay's private art studio, where she is right now, and you can see some of her art behind her on the wall. Her bold and vibrant paintings have been shown in several prestigious galleries around the country, including the gallery at Fossil Ridge and New York City, earning her a distinction by Texas Monthly Magazine as one of the top artists to collect now. As an active spokesperson, artist, and writer, Gaddis is the celebrated author of Cowgirl Power, How to Kick Ass in Business and Life, and is a regular contributor to Forbes and part of Fortune's Powerful Women Insider Network. She's an active speaker with corporate student groups, and over her career, she's received numerous awards and honors, including Fast Company's Top 25 Women Business Builders and Inc. Magazine's Top 10 Entrepreneurs of the Year. So thank you so much, Gay. Certainly distinguished career and background, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us and speak to small businesses here in Austin. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. This is a privilege. I love small business, so this is exciting for me.
Wonderful. Well, I want to start out by learning a little bit more in your own words about kind of the origin story of your entrepreneurial path and T3. And I understand you founded your business in 1989, which was during the savings and loan crisis. And this was a recession then, obviously different than the one we're experiencing now. But I think there's probably a lot of lessons that we can learn about how to start a company during a recession or an economic downturn. So if you could share a little bit about that.
Yes, it was a very difficult time in the history of our country. Texas was particularly hit hard during that. As you mentioned, the savings and loans crashed. The real estate wasn't worth the dirt it was built on. So it was a very, very difficult time. And I had just had a complete idea, that we needed to do things differently. And so I left the company that I was working for, which was a bit crazy at the time because where was I going to get another job? But I quit because I'd written a business plan. I decided to start my own company. Here's what happened. You mentioned that it was a $16,000 IRA. That's all the money I had. My husband and I were really, really broke at the time and had 3 kids, and it was a very tough time to do anything. But I started with 3 clients, and they were healthcare clients. I had a background in healthcare marketing, and it was a unique skill that I had for several reasons in my career, but we won't go into that. But I did start with those. And the interesting thing about them were those types of accounts, the healthcare and hospital accounts, were about the only client spending money during that time frame. So I went immediately to a client base that was spending money. So I advise people today, if you're trying to zig and zag during all these things, you've got to go to people. Some people are spending money. And not everybody gets hurt in these downturns. There's always a few winners out there. So we went to the winners. And the other thing that was really important is that I decided I was not going to borrow any money to start the company. And I literally bootstrapped it myself. And so the $16,000 IRA was it, but I partnered with the clients I had, and I asked them to kind of help me fund the growth that it would take to service their business. And so we worked hand in hand together to do that. But we had very candid relationships with our clients, and we're fortunate to land another account shortly after we opened the business that was a cable company, and they were selling cable to people all over the country. And this is before we all wanted to buy cable. So it was kind of a tough sell in some ways, but we were very successful with that. So again, that was a company that was working on a national stage, based in Austin though, which was unique at the time. But it was out there doing something, and we could make a difference, and we could see immediate results. So that's something else that I really always say to folks who are trying to get your business going, or how you're selling, or what products and services you're offering. If you can offer results and build off those, that's what's going to be sticky, and that's how you keep your business. But don't borrow money if you don't have to. Don't bring in investors. I do realize that some businesses are very capital intensive, and that's different than my service model business. But if you can do it on your own, or you don't have to be beholden to too many investors or banks or whatever, you'll have more freedom to make decisions and be able to be a little bit more flexible in your decision making down the road.
Great advice. And I have a follow-up question on that, because it sounds hard, but at the same time, you make it sound a little bit easy, right? So I want to know, how did you make that leap into business? Because I can imagine a lot of people are thinking right now about starting a business, but they're also thinking about trying to conserve resources. So how do you change your mindset and find the courage and overcome the fear of failure to start in a downturn? What worked for you?
Fortunately, I had worked for some good companies going into this. And so the experiences that I had, and some were good and some were not so good, but I learned from all of those. I was an art major in college, and so that's how I got in the advertising business in the first place, was I could draw, and that's what we did back in those days. We drew everything, and I could write copy. So I wrote. But what happened is, I had started to build my confidence. And this is something I talk about a lot in the book, is that you do the hard work, you really learn and you get good at something and you develop an expertise. That hard work leads to competency, and then you become competent. I knew that I knew how to run advertising accounts and make money. I knew how to deliver the creative product. So every time I would win over a client or come up with an award-winning campaign, or I would come up with something that got extraordinary results, that just boosted my confidence. And I talk about in Cowgirl Power, that's the power you get from within. It's not a top-down power. It's like, wow, I feel confident. I achieved that. And so all of a sudden I feel more powerful. I had built those little power strokes up over the years. And by the time I started my company, I didn't know that I would be successful. You know, I was scared to death. I'm not going to tell you I was just confident enough to swagger out there and say, yeah, we're going to be great and we're going to grow. I didn't know that. I could not fail because my family depended on it. So I was highly motivated to do well and to keep my clients happy and to make money or make a profit so that I could survive and move on. But it all came from the experience and confidence I had. So I advise everyone to think back. You know, if you're starting a business or you're trying to grow a business or hang on to a business, what are the competencies that you really have earned along the way? And you should feel confident about that. If you don't really understand the business you're in and you don't really have that experience, then you need to either get it, you know, be a quick learner, get into that, or maybe you need to pivot and do something else, because it all has to come from the confidence. But don't be too hard on yourself. Now, you know, you've built up some skills and strengths and all those things along the way in life's lessons and whatever education you have and whatever you put your mind to. So draw on those things and really lean on those as you begin to build your business or get out there and try things you've never done before. You know, when I started my business, I never opened a business before. I'd never done that. So I had to learn pretty quickly about that. And the first thing I did was go see a lawyer and incorporate my business. And I started to try to do things that would set us up to succeed. But again, it was small steps. I did so many things myself, Lance. I even kept my own books, which that was one of the first things I delegated as soon as I could, because I'd taken accounting classes and I knew how to do it, but that certainly was not my forte. And so, you know, what you want to do when you start your business is sometimes you have to wear every hat in the house and you do everything you have to do just to make things go. And actually, we're going to talk about this later in this talk, but I've just started a new business myself recently. And so we'll talk about, I'm in that new business mode again for myself. But it all comes down to just draw on your strengths and your confidence and then go forward. And if something doesn't work, make a quick mid-course correction and move on, because you'll learn from that. And it's okay. It's just, okay, you're better than you think.
Absolutely. And it's this idea of authenticity. And I really resonated with that message in your book as well. And I think maybe one silver lining of less social activities, maybe a little bit of downtime, is you get a little time and space to do some of that important self-reflection and introspection, so you can find out, what are my competencies, what are my strengths, what are my values, and how can I better align my work going forward with those strengths and values. So it can be an opportunity to really check in with that.
Absolutely.
So I want to ask you about something you described in your book as the single most powerful thing you've done in your life, and that is creating the T3 and Under program, I believe it's called. And so I want you to share with us what that program was, because it's so relevant today, as so many people are now working from home, and we see them on Zoom calls, and they're trying to balance work with children running up by their side. I'm hungry, play with me, check this out. So how were you able to bring children, young children, into the workplace and strike that balance? I think it's fascinating, and maybe one of the only tales of a company who was doing this back in the 90s, right? Maybe now it's acceptable, but way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it was absolutely unheard of when I decided to do this. I'll explain briefly what it is. First of all, I'm the mother of three. And because I started my company, which is one of the reasons I started it, to be honest. I worked 24/7, but I also knew I was my own boss. And if I wanted to take off on a Wednesday afternoon to take my daughter horseback riding, which I did, or if I wanted to do this or go to the soccer game or show up at a school play, I didn't feel like anyone was looking over my shoulder and saying, no, you need to be at the office right now. So one of the reasons to be an entrepreneur and start your own company is you make your own rules. That's good. The T3 and under program, though, was born in the 90s, like you said. One of our large clients at the time, that was a growing client, was Dell in Austin. And I had 4 women who had been very key in that business. And all of them got pregnant within a few months of each other. And I've always laughed and said, I don't know how that happened, but it did. Was there an ice storm or something I missed? But whatever. So they came to me one by one to tell me their good news. And although I was happy for them as a colleague and basically friend, I was also really worried that they wouldn't come back, because you have to think about it. In the 90s, and I knew 2 of them had a person in their life that could certainly support them, and they didn't need to come back to work. So I made up this crazy dream, and I just said, why don't you just bring the babies with you to the office? And they didn't know what I was talking about. And they said, oh, you're going to open a daycare? And I said, oh no, we're not going to do a licensed daycare. My attorney found out about it and said, you can't do this. You know, you're not licensed. You can't do it. And I said, Doug, you just watch me. It's the right thing to do. Well, we tried it. And the 4 came in and they brought their little children. And over 28 years of this program, we had about 110 little babies come through the program. We had dads participate, we had moms. And what it was, and what it ended up being, was the segue between maternity, paternity care, and then getting back in the office. So I will tell parents at home right now, the T3 and under program is a lot easier than what you're dealing with at home, because it took a village to take care of these kids. What happened is it became part of our culture. And you would have, there was one guy at the office who was always swooping by, picking up one of the babies and spelling the mom or dad while he or she was on a phone call or while he or she was in a very important meeting. And we just kind of helped each other out in this thing. There was also a group of parents that kind of bonded together in all this, and they would advise each other maybe about a doctor that they wanted to refer you to, or a good soccer program that was maybe out here you wanted your kid to enroll in, and camps and all the things that parents talk about. So they had this network inside. It's just an amazing bonding experience. And what it did, and what it still does today, even though I've sold T3, is it allows parents to make that important segue. It is hard, and I mean hard, to give up a child in those early months. They're just too little. And so if you can make that ease and bring them back in, then all of a sudden when it's time for them to go into a daycare program or into another facility of some sort or child care, then it's not as gripping and tearing to the person. And so it creates loyalty. It created a culture of caring, and that we really did give a dang about these people and their kids. And so I'm very proud of it. And the other flip side to all this is those children have done really well in school. And I've studied this, and we know that early language development is key to the development mentally and to an education for a child. So if you're at home with your kids, read to them like crazy, talk to them, and especially the little kids. It was good for our little kids to hear complex sentences. You know, they were passed around the office and they would hear adults talking about things, and you could just see their little lights going on in their brain and their smiles on their face. And I think it really does a lot for early childhood development.
I have a 2-year-old, and my in-laws, we're fortunate enough to have in-laws here locally who watch her. They're actually watching right now. I saw their name pop up. So Emiliana, I hope you hear this and you're learning and you're reading with your pops right now. And one thing, I think if we were in person with this event, you'd have just gotten a huge round of applause, because it's It takes a lot of courage and authenticity to, I read in a lot of business plans, we're going to have work-life balance, we're going to have this, we're going to have that. It's one thing to tell me that, right? It's one thing to say that, but it's an entirely different thing to put it into practice and really embed it into the culture. And I think the T3 and Under program is a great example of that. And one thing I read from the book that was really cool is you've actually had some of those babies come back to T3 as interns in college, right? So I mean, the full circle.
Yeah, that was really amazing. I had the two first T3 and under babies were in our intern program a few years ago, and I don't hire the interns, or didn't I don't. Well, now I don't, but I didn't hire the interns at that time. I delegated that. And so when I walked into the intern class and saw Haley and Davis, I just broke into tears because they were our first two T3 and under babies. And to continue that story, with social distancing and masks, I'm going to the wedding of Haley Sunday night. And so we're very excited to celebrate that next chapter in her life.
Beautiful, beautiful story. Well, I have another couple of questions, and then I want to open it up to the audience. If you have questions, you can go ahead and type those into the chat box. Yeah, another thing you talk about in your book is the ability to prioritize, right? And as you're starting up or growing a business, you're wearing so many hats, as you say, and then it becomes even harder to prioritize, I think, when you have the anxiety of so much disruption going on around you. So how do you prioritize? What methods do you use? And how do you do it, especially during a recession or during a disaster?
Here's what you have to do. First of all, you got to know who your consumer, client, or customer is. And you go right there and you figure out what are their needs, what are their habits, how are they buying, what are their issues, what are they struggling with, and you go right there. And that's where your priorities will come from, because you'll say, okay, this is what I have to get done to meet those needs that they have. That's where it always comes through. And you look at those, and the customer insights we have, all that's great, but you just talk to people. You know, I was always very close to our clients, and I would have conversations. What are the problems they're facing? What are the issues they have? And, you know, right now, all of the clients are having their same problems. You know, they're downsizing, and they have issues with their staff, or they have, you know, sales are down. What are they going to do? Although, like I said, on the flip side, there's some companies and some things that are doing well during this. So, you know, you have to go there and say, well, how do we meet that? How do we ramp that up? How do we duplicate that? So if you stick to that and not just your own issues and go there, your priorities will start to line up. And you just have to focus. And I'm a person, I'm self-admitted, I'm multitask and I'm all over the place. So focus for me is not easy. But I always said, go where the money is, go where your best results are going to be, and follow the client need, follow the customer. And all of a sudden the priorities just stack right up in place for you.
Great. My last question, then we'll open it up, is now that, you know, we're social distanced, the offices are closed, so many entrepreneurs are working out of their homes. There can certainly be feelings of isolation, especially for those one founder companies or very small companies that are not together anymore. In your book, you credit several mentors, and I think mentors and coaches and peer networks, you can still access those even though we're in a virtual setting. But talk to us a little bit about the importance of mentors throughout your career.
They're very important. You know, I never had an official formal mentoring program, but I had some people along the way who I really believed in. They believed in me. They gave me confidence. And that was the thing they did more than anything. I'll never forget when I was in a very interesting situation, one of my jobs back in the 80s, and I was working for Baylor Medical Center in Dallas, and I walked into my boss and said, well, this is going to be really tough to pull off, and I'm not sure I'm up to it. I was so young. And he just looked back at me. He said, you're not going to screw this up. The very fact that you walked in here and you're worried you're going to do it tells me you're going to take care of everything. So go do your job and forget about it. Things like that. It's just those, you've got to cling sometimes to these attaboy, attagirl kind of comments that come at you, because those are the things that help you really say, okay, I can't let them down. I'm going to do it. Um, the other thing about all of this and being alone, I certainly understand that. That has got to be incredibly difficult for people who have very small companies and they don't have those folks around. But I'm actually offering a webinar series that the first one starts July 15th. We're going to have 3 this summer. You can go to gaygaddis.com webinars. And in those sessions, we're purposely keeping them to a limited group. I'll be doing that. We're going to talk about specific issues that I think are facing us right now. We'll have very robust Q&A, and I'm hoping that anyone on this small business call that would like to join us will give you a discount just because you're on this call. It's like put Austin in the code. It is a small fee to participate because this is a true session. It's a learning session, not just me talking about things. We're really going to get down in the weeds. So I'm hoping that will help. But look for mentors. Ask people to help you. Reach out. This is something that is so funny. I remember years ago, I would sit around and say, you know what? I'd like to talk to so-and-so. Or I think I could learn from this person. And I would find a way to get in touch with them. And I didn't get to speak to everybody, or I didn't get a response from everybody, but I certainly did get more than I would have thought. And you'd be surprised how many people are out there that would want to help you or could give you advice, who maybe has expertise in your field, and maybe they've been through a lot. They're older now, or they've been through some things and they're ready to give back. So don't be afraid to reach out to people, because they're out there. And it just takes a little work on your part to research the individuals in your field or in your industry that could really give you some much needed advice right now, and kind of take that fear of acting alone away. Because I know what happens though. Here's the thing though, even though, you may be feeling lonely or kind of one person band right now, it kind of comes down to that. And the decision making I had through the years was I consulted with people. I tried to bring people along, but when the rubber met the road, I had to make the decision. I had to do it on my own. And so that's what it takes, the resiliency and the toughness to make decisions, make them quickly, and move on. So yes, you can consult. Yes, you can have mentors, and yes, you can have colleagues, but as a leader or someone who is the entrepreneur behind a business, it stops with you.
I often ask entrepreneurs in my classes in early stage, how many have a mentor or a trusted advisor that they can use as a sounding board, or just kind of get some advice from, and very few hands go up. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity to tap into you and your wisdom as part of their brain trust during these upcoming webinars, and I know we'll share some more information about those at the end. I'll also mention some other groups. Score.org is a local mentorship nonprofit, and they provide mentorship through volunteers. So that's a great local resource. As Gay mentioned, just going and asking people. I've found that Austin is a very giving and collaborative entrepreneurial community. It still has a little bit of that small collaborative town feel, even though it's a growing city. So I think it's tremendously important, especially as people are feeling isolated, to try and overcome that and get out and talk to people. So thank you for sharing that. I know we do have a question or two in the chat box. I'm going to ask Jackie if she'll read the first one.
Our first question is from Chaz. Thank you, Chaz. Appreciate it. He's asking, you said avoiding outside funding gave you flexibility down the road. Can you expound on things that you couldn't have done if you had outside investment, and how it might have affected your business?
Yes, and I want to again reiterate that there are some businesses that are very capital intensive, that are making products, and they have to have some outside cash. And I understand that. I totally understand that business model. But for me, it was really better for us to, I called it living within our means. We didn't try to inflate the dollars coming in and then how are we going to pay that back? I always believed that, and the way we ran it was that we had the decision-making ability to act very quickly and do what we need to do. The minute you take outside funds, there is, even if it's from a bank, even if it's a loan, or even, you know, if it's just a swing loan or whatever, they're looking at your numbers. They require certain things. They want to give advice. If you have outside real investors, they're going to be on your board or they're going to be in your advisory team, and they'll tell you how they think you ought to run your business because they're invested in you and they want to make a return. There's no one who's going to invest in you who doesn't expect to make a return of some sort. And so you think about that, what control are they going to have over day-to-day decisions? Like, for example, when I decided to open a New York office, if I'd had outside investors, I can guarantee you they wouldn't have said that was a good idea at the time. Some of the things we did down the road, investing in people, I would do that rather than just put it back in the bottom line. You have investors out there, they're going to force as much money as they can down to the bottom line because that's how they make their money back. And I many times would decide, okay, this year, and I will say, every year I was in business, I made a profit every year, which is unbelievable in some of the downturns we had. However, I could decide if, let's say in year 2002, I was going to make a lot less profit that year and invest it in technology, invest it in people, and invest it in programs that I thought was going to do well down the road. And so I became my own investor, basically. And, you know, again, I understand that a lot of companies need outside money because you couldn't possibly raise that much or fund it just on your own growth. But if you can go without it and do without it, I think it's very clean and it sure makes life easy. And, you know, you literally are in charge of your own destiny that way, and not having to always have someone over your shoulder saying, well, let's not do that, or I believe you can't do that, or you've got to hype up this or that. I always felt like we could only work for our clients that way. And if we were making decisions based on what their needs were and not having the outside investor over my shoulder, then we could move more quickly and efficiently.
Thank you. Great question, Chaz. Jackie, are there any other questions?
Yes, we do. We have one from, I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your name, Ara. Said that you're involved in United Way's family-friendly workplace initiative. Those guidelines will need to be revised given the new realities. So, you know, what do you think the family-friendly workplace of the future will look like? And Ara, thank you very much for your question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because we're going to have to rethink all of this. We've learned so much. And, you know, I had a friend the other day who said, 2020, maybe it's the year we've all been waiting for. And although you can look at it as the glass half empty, we're learning so much on so many levels. There's so many things that are creating change and eye-opening and all of that on, like I said, on so many societal levels. But the thing that I'm interested in this question is, okay, what are we going to do with our families? We have to find ways to make it easier for parents. And you think about it, it's the young children, but then I went through business long enough and had employees who were with me long enough who had elderly parents or had some other family member that needed and required a lot more of their time than they would have years ago. So it's on both ends of the spectrum. Certainly it has a big impact on our children and how we're going to deal with them. I hope, to be honest, that we can get kids back in some sort of school program. I don't see how parents can continue to work the way they are, but I think it works better for some than others. I will say that. Maybe there's a choice there. But again, we have to be much more flexible, and I think we've learned to be. We've learned that we can work from home differently, but I will say this. There's going to be a backlash at some point on that. Some companies can do that better than others, but I'm a big believer in that collaborative environment. The innovation in our company and the exciting things and just the culture and the camaraderie came from those hallway discussions, came from sitting around the lunch table, came from sitting, in a meeting and just brainstorming and talking, and or even just passing by someone's desk and giving them a compliment that boosts their day. There's just something about that team environment that you can't replace with a Zoom meeting or something like that. So I think we're going to have to do that. But why not find ways where parents can help each other out? It's what we did at T3. If you needed to go to a meeting, well, maybe this parent had a little time off, and let's be more collaborative. Let's look at this whole situation of families, be it elderly parents, an ill family member. I've had other employees through the years who had a family member who was going through the last stages of a very difficult battle with cancer. They needed to be with that family member because they were going to lose them. And so I gave extreme flexibility to those employees, and we would just all go together, and I would sit around with their team and say, can you back her up? Can you do this, or do we need to bring in some outside help? So employers are going to have to be a little bit more in tune, I think, with their staffs, with their employees on what the real issues are that are going on, and help each other out. Let's do it as a family farm. That's what I used to say. When my grandparents were growing up, they were all on farms, and somebody would be, gathering the eggs while someone made the breakfast, while someone was about to go out and cut the hay fields. And so everybody worked together, and somehow they made it work. And at the same time, on those family farms, there were little kids. And so who was taking care of them while everybody was doing their chores? Well, they all shared. And sometimes the older brothers and sisters would help take care of the younger ones. So we have to think collaboratively. We have to think differently about the community we have to build around our families. And if you do that, people are extremely loyal. Don't think you're just giving it away. I have found people be absolutely indebted, loyal, and so thankful when I was able to do something to help them through a family segue, a transition of some sort.
And certainly T3 is an exemplar of how to put this into practice, and not just on paper, but really embed it into the culture. And as you mentioned, it can also be a real differentiator for companies emerging from this downturn. And if you really embrace this and you really are offering programs and a culture where you can have that balance and support, you might be able to attract some of the top talent, whereas your competitors won't. So a silver lining for sure.
Lance, I want to reiterate what you're saying there. We all look at downsizing during a revenue shortage, and we have to do some of those things, but also think about this as an opportunity to find top talent. I would always try to invest in talent, and when recessions and downturns would come, people would be available in the marketplace that weren't previously available. They were out of work, or they were changing gears, moving to Austin that they hadn't moved to Austin before, or some of the things. And so we were really always on the lookout during a downturn for, gosh, if we could just invest in that person in 6 to 9 months, it's going to pay off. And so really start looking at who's out there. Is there some talent that you've always wanted that may not have been available 6 months ago, but they are now?
Absolutely. And during the last recession, we saw kind of paradigm shifts in a lot of companies and economies. This is, 2008 is really when we saw the explosion of the gig economy, the explosion of the sharing economy. And what was created during that downturn has really changed the last 10 or 12 years, business in so many ways. And maybe this is an opportunity to do that again. So thank you for that. Jackie, are there any other questions?
Yeah, we do. Okay, Christy, thank you, Christy, for your question. She wants to know what leadership skills are most in need right now. What are we looking at? What kind of leadership skills do we need now?
Well, I think Lance said this earlier, and we all talk about resiliency and grit and all those things, but, it goes into, where is your heart? And are you passionate about what you're doing? And if you are, you will have an amazing ability to bring people along. And when I say bring people along, no leader goes alone. And your customers, your colleagues, all those people need to feel like that you know what you're doing and that you're passionate, and you need to start bringing them along. One of the things that was most valuable to me, and I did not learn this at the beginning of my career, was when I truly learned who I was. And I'm talking about from a strengths and weaknesses standpoint. And I was introduced to the Myers-Briggs type indicator when I was about 24, I think. And at that moment, and there's other, assessments and different kinds of things that you can look at to really look at just kind of getting down to the grit of who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are. If a leader knows that, then the secret weapon is you play up on your strengths, but you have to find people that you work with, that are around you, you surround yourself with, that shore up your weaknesses. And yes, you may not be able to hire all those people right off the bat. You may not have the funds to do it, but just think, you're always building a team, always. And it can be small, it could be outside help, it could be just a friend or advisor or whatever, but get the people on your team who are going to be diverse in thinking, be diverse in how they really look at a problem. So there's a lot of forms of diversity, but if you get your strengths in your head and you know what you're really good at, focus on that. Totally focus on your strengths, and that's what you bring forward, and let other people do the things that you don't do well. And as a team together, you will succeed. It's really, really important, though, to not worry about what your weaknesses are, because we all have them. And you try to put on every hat and you try to do everything. You can do that for a while, but in the long haul, you've got to stick with your strengths and how that fits in a situation. And the more you eclipse your strengths with the situation you're in, the more successful you're going to be.
I couldn't agree more. I'm such an advocate of that style of leadership, and I found a lot of people, it's even hard for them to articulate their own values, their own top values, much less understanding the values of those they work with or those that they manage. And I think that intention as a leader to find those things out and to really manage from people's strengths, it really is a tremendous way to be a leader. And so thank you for mentioning
Well,
that.
that's how I built teams too, because I knew everyone's strengths and weaknesses. We were very transparent about that in the company, and they all went through the assessments and we all talked about it. And I could literally, make sure that I had teams that had different types of folks on there. So if you have all one kind of type, of Myers-Briggs, or you have all one kind of type, then the innovation gets shut down. You've got to have people with different points of view and coming at it from different ways. And all of a sudden things just blossom.
Jackie says we got another question coming in.
Yeah, we do. Archie, he's going to be starting a digital marketing agency for consumer product goods. And he's curious to know, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started T3?
Well, what I wish I had known. I was moving so quickly and was just trying to survive. And that was really a good thing, and maybe this is where we are right now. If there's not a lot of fluff, and extra stuff around, and you're not just laying back on laurels, you really work hard. And so this is what this is what you always have to do. I never lost sight of that, though. And I look back on it now, and I always thought that was kind of the startup mode, where I was going to have to just really double down and work really hard. And then somehow I would kind of go into, an easier gear and things would get easier. They never did. So, if you have an appetite to be an entrepreneur, things will change, of course, and you'll have better years and better times than others, but you always have to plan for a downturn. You always have to plan for the fact that things may not be easy. All kinds of things will happen. If you're in a marketing firm, I did learn this too, and I didn't realize it at the beginning, is when you go into a recession or you go into a downturn of any kind, marketing dollars are really easy for companies to cut. And so that would be sometimes the first thing to go. I'll never forget 2009, wow, talk about getting kicked in the teeth. We were doing great. You know, we were growing our digital business. We had fabulous Fortune 100, 200 clients. Everything was rocking along. And here comes 2009. Every client we had called me and said, we have to cut our budget. They've just laid off half our team. We're not going to fire you, but you're doing a great job, but we only have 10% left of the budget. I mean, it was heartbreaking, and the decisions we had to make were absolutely horrific, but we had to do it, and we made them quickly. So that's the other thing. Make a decision quickly. You can't, if you wait around for sometimes things to change again, it'll be over. So be tough and make decisions when you have to. So realize that marketing can go, but it also can be one of the first things to come back. So that's the upside of it. As soon as companies can start spending again, they know they have to sell, and they know they have to get their products and services out there, so they start to add back the marketing thing. The other piece of the digital side is that because, and I wouldn't have known this when I started the company, I had no idea what the internet was going to do to our business. And we were one of the very first early companies to embrace it because of Dell. You know, I talk about Dell being a big client of ours starting in the 90s. So I had no idea that this internet thing was going to change and rock our world forever. But boy, it did. And it completely turned us around into a different type of company. But again, the good news about that is we could measure that. And so when some of my other agency colleagues were losing business and it wasn't coming back, ours would come back more quickly because we had the data, we had the analytics, and we had absolute ways of tracking customers and making sure that the dollars spent by our clients were dollars well spent that got results.
Yeah, I've spoken with a lot of entrepreneurs in the marketing, advertising world, and some were doing, primarily event management. Events have disappeared, and so I think that advice is very timely and hopefully reassuring for our audience. So I think that's all the questions we have, but I want to, Gay, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of share some final thoughts and also tell us about your upcoming webinars later this month. What can people expect from those? And I know I've got the link I'll put in the chat box, but how can they learn more and get involved?
Well, thank you for letting me do that. First of all, just kind of as a parting shot, thank you very much for inviting me to participate today. Again, I'm a big believer in small business. I think it is the backbone of our country, and it's broken my heart to see how so many small businesses got hurt to the point that many will not be able to reopen, and it's just really difficult. But inside those small businesses are entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are resilient, and entrepreneurs have a spirit of survival and of creativity and innovation. So tap into that. You know, what I've had to do after I sold T3 end of October, which I think most of you know, and that was a big transition for me. But my new company, Gay Gaddis LLC, is about leadership training. It's about my art, which I am an artist, and if anyone can see, I'm in my art gallery. And it's about speaking and giving people hope and energy to do the things you want to do, because I hope to launch more entrepreneurs out there and have more people lead in very decisive ways to bring us to a better place. So that's what I'm doing. And so I'm in startup mode. You know, it's all over again. And I'm kind of bootstrapping myself once more and trying to take off with a new direction in the next phase of my life. So I do have some webinars coming up. It's one way we decided to address an audience, because I'm not out speaking in public like I usually do with a live audience, which, by the way, I miss very much that live audience interaction. But we thought, well, the webinars was a way to reach people in a broader geography and those who are looking to really hone their leadership skills. And so we're going to really talk about what are tough times and how do you prepare for it? How do you always prepare for those things? And to really get yourself emotionally prepared to do these things, you got to really take care of yourself, and we're going to talk about how to do that. And, you know, getting credibility with your staff. How do you show them that you are confident and you know the way and that they can trust you? It's a really big thing, and that authenticity and transparency we talked about earlier is absolutely key. And then we're going to talk about right sizing the staff. And you may have a staff of one or no one, and what I'm saying about that is there's two sides to it. So you can right size the staff in a downturn to get it in the right place and get your finances under control. But there's also an interesting thing. What if your business takes off? Or what if you're one of those businesses that are doing well? Then the right sizing of the staff is another issue, because do some of the people feel like they're totally overworked now because all of a sudden they're doing more than they ever had to do? And so it's the care and feeding of a staff on a down and upside. And we're going to talk about what that's like and how that works. And then how innovation, is a secret weapon. So these are kind of the things, and we'll just end with, what can you do right now? What can you do today? So we'll be very hands-on. We're gonna have a lot of live Q&A, and it's a live webinar. So first one starts July 15th, and you can go to my website, gaygaddis.com, and look up webinars, and you will find them. And we're going to offer a discount to anyone on this call today. If you post in Austin as the code, and we'd love to have any of you join us. And at that, like I said, we will have a very robust Q&A in that based on the topics we cover.
Thank you, Gay. And we've included a link to the webinars page on your website, so you can click on that. And Jackie's also shared a link to a post-webinar survey, so you can share your feedback with us. And then I'll finally say that we have some upcoming classes that you can learn about through at austinsmallbiz.com. I'll share a link to that. Our next one, I believe, is July 16th, and we're going to be talking about improving your marketing now and post-pandemic with one of our instructors that we contract with through the University of Texas. Mr. Chris Ahrens will be speaking, and all of our classes for at least the next several months will remain free. So take advantage of this. This is your opportunity to continue your learning. And Gay, I just want to give you a warm thank you from the City of Austin, from the small business community. This has certainly been a pleasure for me to interview you, and I appreciate your time. I hope it was a bright spot for everyone's day and everyone's week.
Well, thank you, Lance, and Jackie, and all of you who work so hard to help our small businesses. And I'm really pleased that the City of Austin is focused there, because, again, it's just such an important part of our community. And I want to congratulate anyone who tackles a business, who is an entrepreneur. You're a special person, and I applaud you and thank you for hanging in there and being tough in a time, and hopefully all of you will flourish and take advantage of the good things that are going to come down the road, because they will. Thank you.
And thank you again, Gay. We really appreciate you taking this time out to put a different side to it. I learned so much in this hour about you and a little bit about myself as well. So thank you very much. And I think I'm going to head out and go get my book. I want a cowgirl.
That's right. There it is.
I want cowgirl power.
That's right.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you all.
Take care and have a great day.
You too. Bye.